I'm so excited to have this guy back on the podcast. You know him, you love him. Recently re-disgraced Food Network host, comedian, internet personality, fellow ginger, Josh Denny. How are you, buddy?
Hey, Chrissie. I'm good. I'm good.
Woo!
I'm doing well.
You look blurry. Chat, does he look blurry? I don't know. Maybe it'll figure itself out. Maybe it'll refocus. So Josh, this is so interesting. I mean, you hosted Ginormous Food on the Food Network a couple years ago. I think you were officially done over there like in what, 2018. This is 3 years ago. And all of a sudden Food Network is taking the opportunity to distance themselves from you.
Yes.
Why is this happening? Why is this happening now, 3 years later?
Yeah, it's an interesting question. You kind of wonder like why this and why now, right? Of all of the and a lot of for anybody who's new here, this has been a running gag that we kind of have amongst my fans on Twitter where every time I tweet something that someone is offended by, it takes a minute and then people start messaging at Food Network to get my show canceled. And people have always asked, like, why do you leave that in your bio? And it's like, well, it's something that I actually did. Like, this is something people don't understand. People are in Food Network's comments now, like, sue him for having that your name in his bio.
I saw that. And you're like, it's still a thing that you did.
Yeah, your credits don't stop being your credits because they're in the past. Like, people don't try to sue Robert De Niro if he ever brings up Goodfellas, you know? And it is still the thing.
So true.
It's still the thing I'm the most known for. It's the thing I've done that had the most viewership. So of course I'm going to leave it in my bio. And people go, well, why don't you put former or disgraced? And it's like, well, maybe if they hired a new host and ran the show again, I would have to make that deviation. But I'm the only ever host of Ginormous Food on Food Network. So, I think that's funny that people do that. But it's been this running gag, sort of mocking cancel culture that the beautiful thing is that nobody takes a second to Google me before they start messaging at Food Network to say, cancel this person's show, take all their money away, deplatform them. And so if you go through my Twitter feed, you'll see every time somebody does that, I'll post it on the Twitter feed with what was it? Who's that character from Ghostbusters? Was it Janine? Who's like, we got one. I post that GIF every single time somebody does that. And it's a really funny running inside gag with my fans and Twitter followers. And there are some people who are like, I only follow you because this is hilarious that this happens every time you piss somebody off. And the Food Network, for the entirety of the time that I have not been on their network, has never engaged with that until today. Until yesterday or the day before. So obviously, and we always joke, like that poor social media intern who's probably like a 20-year-old girl in college who's like working for college credit, who's answering their social media, has just got to be tortured with people like, fire Josh Denny every time it happens. And so yeah, it's like a funny thing, but yesterday was the first time they've ever actually commented. And not only did they comment, but they pinned it to the top of their Twitter. So essentially they're saying, disassociating ourselves with Josh Denny is even more important than promoting any of our programming right now.
For real? Let me click on their thing. Food Network. Wow. Yep, you're right. They have pinned this tweet about you to the top of there. This is more important than bourbon barbecued pork chops, Josh. I hope you know that.
This is more important than promoting Sebastian Maniscalco's new show on Discovery Plus, which is actually pretty enjoyable, by the way.
Our working relationship with Josh Denny has ended years ago, and we removed all episodes he hosted at that time. His views do not reflect our company values, and we regret giving him a platform. And this was brought on because you tweeted, you had a tweet thread about abortion?
I had 2 tweet threads about abortion. I've basically been making jokes and talking about the Texas abortion ban since the law came out or was announced on Tuesday or Wednesday, earlier in the week, whenever that happened.
Okay. And it's so interesting. And I've been thinking I was gonna show your exact tweet, and you weren't saying anything crazy. You were just like, let me find your thread here.
Yeah, I'm learning something about myself through all of these quote unquote scandals, is that I might be the best comedian on the internet at my language being what triggers people, like just knowing how to pick the right words to rile people the fuck up. But problem they had was when I said spare me. It was the tweet where I said spare me that 6 weeks isn't enough time to know that you're pregnant. I said whores. Only whores know they're not, or don't know they're pregnant for 6 weeks.
Which is funny, and I don't even know if it's horror so much as like how out of touch with your body do you have to be to miss a period and then be like, oh, I should really look into that. Like
Tom Segura did a whole bit about this on his special where he was talking about that show. I didn't know I was pregnant. And they were like, he's like, I'm going to butcher his bit, but he's like, I thought I had to take a shit, but it wasn't a shit. It was a baby. You know what I mean? It's like, so obviously I'm like, I am. And the thing that's so hilarious is how quick with these cancel culture moments that people project onto you what their interpretation was by what you said. So people go, you said all women are whores. And I go, no, I didn't. And they go, well, you said any woman that gets an abortion is a whore. No, I didn't.
No, I didn't.
Didn't say that. Didn't say any of those things. So, and what's amazing is for you to be offended by that joke, you have to self-identify as a whore. I didn't specify that women are whores. I didn't say who I was talking about. I just said whores. So if that bothers you, maybe you should take a look at yourself.
And it's like, I personally think like, right, it's not necessarily that you're very sexually active, because my friends who are in the adult industry are the most on top of their bodies. They're more on top of their bodies and their cycles than women who aren't.
Anybody.
So yeah, you'd have to be kind of really out of touch with things. And it's also interesting because I feel like people on the left like to purposely misunderstand anybody who goes against their message, anybody who's a conservative, or on the right deemed like part of the wrong side. Like they'll go out of their way to, I've noticed this a lot. Obviously, like Gavin McInnes is a huge target. And this is why part of the reason why I started this podcast. I love talking to people who are kind of purposely misunderstood. And then they bring back your tweet from, you made a tweet, I think it was in 2018, and you were like, the term straight white men is now becoming like the N-word because it's used in a disparaging way. It's used as an insult.
Well, and it's also something that we blanketly blame society's problems for. Like, go back to the thing I always compare that to is like Goodfellas, right? Where the mobsters rob the truck, and he goes, yeah, just call in and say 2 black guys took the truck. And he didn't say black guys, obviously. He says the N-word. But it's like, and then I assume on the other end, the police were just like, yeah, that makes sense. They steal everything. You know what I mean? So it's like back then we just had this sort of racist social acceptance that everything that was bad in the world was probably black people. And now we're just doing it to white people.
Yet they will. I've seen this so many times. I even saw like George Takei had a tweet like, oh, is this the guy who had the N-word tweets? They will purposely kind of like misunderstand. They will purposely get you wrong on that. Like you're comparing it to the N-word. Like you are not, I don't think you were out there tweeting the actual N-word.
No, but I have done that in the past when I'm quoting somebody, or if I'm making a bit where that's the punchline or that's part of the bit, or, the one bit that people got mad about when I was on the TMZ podcast was I was trying to explain to the host, who was black, that a white comic can use that word talking about someone else saying something offensive, and then I'm making comedy to kind of show why their point of view is offensive or wrong. But I go, I make the creative choice in that joke to use their language because I want to put the audience in a place that is as uncomfortable as I was, because without putting them there, the punchline doesn't work as well. And so, but I go, listen, my point of view on language is this: when it comes to art or anything creative, anything goes. You have the responsibility as the artist to take the risk if you want to, and you deal with the consequences of that risk. And then that sharpens you as a comedian. You decide, do I want to keep doing that bit or do I not want to keep doing that bit? So I'm an anything goes in comedy kind of person. But the problem is people will try to take jokes that I make as that comedian and then tie them or attach those things two points I also try to make on Twitter or on the internet, and then draw a correlation between the two that isn't there.
Right. Wow. And that's the thing is like, you're not an idiot. You know the potential blowback you can get from even writing out N word. You don't even have to say the actual N word. Like, you
Sure.
know, and I think for as far as comedy goes, right, nothing should be off limits. The only thing that should curtail your jokes or your set would be the lack of laughter. If someone is not laughing, to me, that's motivation to tweak what I'm doing.
Yeah, absolutely, right. But the other thing is you and I both know there are so many comedians who are critical of people like me or people like you who kind of say whatever they want, but they never take those risks. Like, they'll go to open mics or they'll go to shows and they do the same fucking 10 minutes they've been doing for 15 years. To me, I always tell people, like, if you're not ever bombing, you're not ever getting better, because you have to take those risks to figure out, you know, where you can kind of carve your path as a comedian.